My face currently feels like I've been run through by Tom Stewart.
Puts it to the top of the square. Oh, beautiful little fist in there by Dale. Crucial centimetre moments.
He definitely has a bit of the Belcho spirit. As I have a bit of the Belcho spirit.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Back Pocket Podcast. I've forgotten my intro. I had it and I forgot it. There you go.
Right.
How you doing, Jack?
Oh yeah, I reckon that's as good an intro as we're going to get this week.
Oh yeah, I was going to say performing in front of a sold out crowd of 0 people.
Oh yeah, because they've actually all bought tickets to whoever's in here next and they haven't actually showed up to this one.
Yeah, they've got tickets to next week's show.
West Coast Geelong was definitely a sellout, that's for sure. Yeah, well, Gather Round happened. It was a success according to all the people who it is financially beneficial for it to be a success.
Especially the wine places. Did you see that article about Carlton business members spending $1 million in wine?
I did not. That's amazing.
260 people on average spent $4,000 worth of wine or something. Ridiculous stuff. So good for them.
I rate that. It was something about $48 million to the South Australian economy, which is genuinely cool for them. I'm not going to fault that part of it. That's definitely a good thing, but it's also another reason why it should be shared from state to state. The AFL gets an extra round of ticket sales, so it benefits them anyway, and South Australia got a practically $50 million boost to their economy.
I would like a $50 million boost to my economy.
I'm pretty sure most states would like that. But look, it was interesting. It was fun. Adelaide Oval held up, which I was impressed with.
That was surprising.
Especially considering the Saints Pies game was in pretty torrential rain at some point. So credit to Adelaide Oval for being a better surface than apparently most others in the country. But yeah, here we are. You did the intro technically. So
I did 2 intros. I did the non-intro and the real intro.
I'll kick us off with votes.
Yeah. We need those, don't we?
One vote went to Liam Jones.
Okay.
13 of his 15 disposals were intercepts, which I think is pretty nuts. He had 7 rebound 50s and 7 contested disposals. Won 9 out of 9 of his defensive one-on-ones. I think if they won that game, we'd be hearing more about his performance than we are at the moment. I think it was kind of brushed over in media. I don't think I saw many mentions of him. Kept Dixon goalless as well, which in a game where Port won is also a pretty impressive effort. So Liam Jones, first vote of the year. We figured he'd probably be in a couple, especially with the Dogs' backline losing Keith for a few weeks there.
I just think it's been a little bit hard to get votes in that backline when everything's kind of been going wrong for them. It's been a bit of an odd one with Josh Bruce back there, but we know Liam Jones is a good player. So especially
with Josh Bruce shaving his head and growing a beard, that does not help me.
It freaks me out
from
when
a distance.
I see him.
I think they're both Liam Jones. Liam Jones's ginger beard does not show up well enough on cameras for me to recognise it compared to Josh Bruce's. So. All right. Me. Your one?
My one vote goes to the Lizard, Nick Blakey.
Yep.
30 disposals, 6 spoils, 7 rebound 50s. I think he had 12 pressure acts as well, 93% efficiency. I think he got 8 coaches' votes as well.
Yeah, and had...
Which seems like a huge game for a 1. But I like the Lizard. I think he's a weird unit.
Great game. I think he was best on ground. Maybe behind Papley, especially... 6 second half goals is pretty hard to look past, isn't it, when the game was closed at half time. I think it was June Bartel said that he might be the only person in the AFL who runs faster after he's kicked a goal than before it.
Papley?
Yeah.
Yeah.
His celebrations are a sight to behold.
He's insane.
Yeah, I think Blakey's game was sensational. 93% disposal efficiency as well. I think you mentioned that.
I did.
Spoils 1% in there too, even though he didn't play a key back role, which I'm surprised they didn't make him considering they're...
I think they held up well, considering all of that. So.
They really did. It was an important win for them, especially to get such a big win on the board, because obviously Richmond, they probably thought they were contending leading into this game.
I don't know about that because the things that
1.5, so 1.5 wins.
The things that Damien Hardwick's been saying in the media makes it seem like that they're trying to soft rebuild for a year or two.
He did drop... You soft build for a year... Why did you bring in Taranto and Hopper then on millions of dollars and traded all your draft picks?
Because they're not too old.
They don't have a first-round draft pick this year.
I don't know then.
They bought one in last year, so So they had two. They were meant to have two, and they got rid of both of them. So
Maybe it's finally time to trade someone
I
out.
did enjoy Dimma saying that he needed a joint to get through Bucks, Lyon, and Lewis.
Well, he
post-game.
didn't. He would have needed the biggest bowl of all time to get through the Geelong West Coast commentary.
Oh my good! I've never heard
Dermy and Rashuda.
worse commentary in my life. I heard Howie called close and close, Holmes and Henry all close several times throughout the game. Stanley's head got sat on. He's getting facial reconstruction surgery this week because he had a fractured eye socket. They didn't see it happen. The commentary was also silent at that point, and they didn't notice it until the ball had gone inside West Coast 50 and come back out and gone past Stanley.
I don't know. Dermy was doing something weird in the box.
Oh, he was up to some nonsense, wasn't he? It was some of the worst. And to be fair, if you were going to give your worst commentary to any game of the weekend, probably that one.
I literally had to walk away from the game because it was that bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, you walked away at the point that it became even and almost more boring because you could tell that neither team was really putting their all into it. But yeah, that was abysmal. My 2 votes was to
sidetrack.
Nick Murray, who one of our favourite games, really didn't trouble the score sheet too much in terms of stats, but I thought he was hugely influential, especially in the second half. He had 12 spoils, won 8 of his 9 one-on-ones against some pretty formidable opposition, and had 7 rebound 50s while he was at it. So I really liked his game. I wrote about pre-season, hoping that he'd be a big improvement for them down back because they really needed it. And I hope that was a coming-of-age game for him because, he's the kind of defender I love to watch, really dour game, but kept some pretty good forwards to, 2 and 2 goals, I think, Mackay and Curnow kicked. So
Don't even remember.
yeah, good goal.
Feels like a lifetime
game.
ago. Crazy to me that he didn't get a single coach's vote.
Oh, I agree. Duday did.
That
And
was
Murray didn't.
strange. Murray played
watched
better
them
than
play
Duday.
different games, but
I guess coaches' votes are weird. They obviously pick stuff that's important to them. We're on 2, is that right?
we're on to
I'm giving 2 votes to Alir.
Yep.
I feel like he's featuring every week this year.
Special mention for me this week, but
11 disposals, 11 intercept possessions. That's pretty good. I like that. He also had 11 1%ers, and I think 9 of them were spoils.
another fantastic final quarter too.
He's just he never stops trying, and I really enjoy watching him play. And again, he's one that I'll absolutely eat crow on because when he got traded there, I thought, why the hell are they pursuing him? And it's worked out wonderfully. Obviously, down season last year, we talked about that, but he's been right in it this year, and is probably going to feature prominently for the rest of the year if he keeps this up.
Leading the votes coming into this week, so you giving him 2 probably props him up a little bit there too. My 3 was to Sam Taylor, who I think might have flown under the radar a bit for me this year. He had 16 intercepts from 20 disposals on the weekend, 12 contested, 8 marks, 6 intercepts of those. He won 5 out of 6 defensive one-on-ones. That was the first defensive one-on-one he's lost this year. He's 18-1. He's in a game that probably, if GWS consider themselves any sort of a team this year, shouldn't have been as close as it was.
Forgetting his 10 spoils in that.
Yeah, 10,
I think he had 9
well.
pressure acts as well.
It was a ripper game. I really like Sam Taylor. He's a great footballer. Incredible game. But
Talk more about him later.
all right, yeah, well, we can.
My 3 I'm putting to Jordan Ridley.
Yep.
Not so much just for his stats, but start of that game, Fritsch looked like he was about to get off the chain. They moved Ridley to him and he shut him down for the rest of the game.
Second half was pretty much silent.
Yeah.
He didn't have his normal score involvements he does. Chandler had to pick up the slack with those. Ridley played a really good game on a very hard to play on forward.
Yeah, and that's the most impressive part and why he's ended up in the votes here. I wanted to fit, and spoilers, he's not in here. I wanted to fit Isaac Quaynor in this week because I feel like he's definitely flown under the radar, but Ridley's performance here pushed him out. I think he had 7 marks and 7 intercepts, 23 disposals, 4 spoils, but it was really the caliber of opponent he shut down when they looked hot that put him there. So that's my 3.
My 4 was to Callum Wilkie.
Yeah.
He's just rolling together an incredible season. He had 24 disposals, 10 of those were intercepts. He had 14 rebound 50s.
Fuck.
Which is just an insane number of 50s. 7 spoils, 12 defensive half pressure acts, 11 marks, 6 of them were intercepts and 3 were contested. He's becoming I tweeted about it after that game. I was like, do you start sizing him at this point for his blazer already? Because I feel like he'd have to have a pretty bog average rest of the year.
It's crazy to think 5 rounds in we have a key back lock, but I think it's pretty obvious.
Incredible game again. He's just playing really good football.
I have him in my special mentions this week simply because I thought these performances were better. But
Yeah, I get that.
my 4, I'm giving to Nick Murray. We already talked about him. Fantastic game. Basically, a wall down there. They didn't really need it, but
When Carlton attempted that comeback in the third term, he was just everywhere, it seemed. I can't speak almost more highly of against a team that was trying to push. They really were coming back at that point. He just rallied and was just a pressuring and spoiling force.
yeah, and the defensive mindset of that back six and some of their midfield were really good and supported him insanely well. So well-deserved defensive effort from that whole team. They were really switched on.
Yeah, I do think that it would be fair to say I think Carlton rat-coached in that game. There were some really good decisions made by Adelaide all around the ground that just turned the flow of that game. Keys played out of his skin, kept Sard quiet and kicked 3 goals. I don't know how.
It's almost like that exact same thing happened last year.
Yeah, incredible games. My 5 was to the aforementioned Nick Blakey.
Oh, Lizard.
I just,
5 votes for the Lizard.
I loved his go. I think it was great when it was on the line. Around half time, that game was really even. His third quarter was just huge. He was dominant. The fact that almost all of his ball was inside defensive 50, he played a proper marshal of the back line.
And that was like the Heat. Like he had a bunch of wing possessions, but they weren't really.
Yeah, he'd get up there or he'd run up there with it or whatever.
Yeah.
And almost none of them were kick outs. I think he took 1 kick out. So the fact that all those touches were earned touches in the back half, brilliant game, but obviously we've already touched on him with your votes.
Yeah,
and I'm sure we've already touched on the person you're about to mention.
Yeah, Sam Taylor 5.
With Sam Taylor.
It's just, you look at the stats line, and obviously, importantly, they won that game on a bunch of tight defensive efforts at the end. Harry Himmelberg as well.
touch on the line was nuts.
But when you go 20 disposals, 10 spoils, 9 pressure acts, 16 intercept possessions, 8 marks, 6 intercepts, that's an insane game. Insane.
It was an incredible game of football. It's funny that to me, I think of that as a Jack Watts game now.
Yeah.
If you kick a goal and then take a mark or touch the ball on the line of defence, that's a Jack Waltz game.
I'm sure there's a lot of players who'll be upset by
there's
that.
a lot of players with like a higher calibre than Jack Watts who've done it, but
Koutafidis is the one that comes to my mind.
yeah, but did he ever get caught texting about tits and swimming?
I hope not. At the same time, he's talking about Silvagni.
There's Silvagni and Gorillas. It's the Kuta. That's a great ad. That's really something else. My special mentions were to Harrison Petty. I thought he played really well in Lever's absence. I thought Darcy Moore as a special mention. There was a lot of hype around him. I couldn't get into my votes
I
this
have
week,
Darcy Moore as my top honourable mention.
Yeah, he was really good, but I think that it was really a joint act back there.
Yeah,
another
Wayne
person in my
well.
special mentions is Nathan Murphy, who, until he got knocked out by Caminiti, was playing really good footy. And then, miraculously, they kicked 3 goals in about 5 minutes after Murphy went off.
I'm giving my dishonourable mention to Esava
Oh,
Radicale.
I have him here. My last honourable mention was Harris Andrews, but I gave the asterisk of it being against North.
That's why I didn't even bring him up.
He was an absolute wall again. How do you have 6 intercept marks in the first term? You go into half-time with 9 intercepts and 14 disposals, and then you just don't touch the ball in the second half. You just don't even... Not once.
And it's
then
not like the ball wasn't down there.
They had 3 and 2 goals kicked by their key forwards. Clearly he was playing on one of them. Like, it was probably Allen, I would say, if you're looking at matchups.
He might have been playing... They might have swung him to another one, and the other one started kicking goals.
Yeah, because I know Colo was playing on Darling. It was not... From an incredible first half that was almost locked in for votes if he played like that the whole game, to a second half where he's spoiling balls into the goal square and Paul de Koning's fumbling to try and touch that ball over the line, and players that is kicking goal by goal up the other end.
I was
ultimate Sav game.
Lining him up 4 votes after the first quarter, and then it was just he Asavid it. So
He really did.
Worth persisting with, though.
Yeah, look, he's showing good signs, and until Henry is back, he will probably keep playing there.
Yeah, I'm not being too negative. It's
just that he needs to really get it to be all together.
And obviously, it didn't affect the game. They didn't lose because of it. However,
from half time, West Coast showed some good signs, especially from the younger players. But
we've seen in close games where it matters.
If
it's been a problem.
like that in the first half of that game, it's more of a problem, right? People are obviously putting a lot of weighting on teams' form at the moment, and I'm finding it very funny. And this is all teams that are around that top end, which is including St Kilda, Essendon, Adelaide are my main three of that. Round 5 last year, Melbourne were unbeaten.
Yep.
Fremantle was second with a percentage of 140. Hawthorn were 8th. St Kilda were 4th. Carlton were 6th. Collingwood were 9th, and Port were last.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Heading into the byes even, in round 11, Melbourne had still only lost one game. Freo were 3rd. St Kilda were 4th. Carlton were 5th. So those two didn't even make finals.
Yeah, 2 out.
Collingwood were 10th at round 11, going into
Yeah.
the byes. And they made a prelim and missed out in a grand final by 1 kick.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we get so carried away with where sides are or how their form is in these first few weeks of the year. And that obviously was a really good win on the weekend by Essendon. And it was what they needed to do. They haven't won a game against a really good side for a number of years now, even when they made finals. But you look at, obviously, St Kilda and Freo both beat Geelong early last year, and then they kind of dropped off halfway through the season once other coaches figured out what their game plan was. And that's something teams are susceptible to. And I think the biggest one for St Kilda with me is, are they going to be able to play that same level of football once they've got all of their stars back?
It will be interesting because I feel like the mix works for the youth they've got in at the moment.
Players who haven't had to play the game plan for a few years either, that Ross Lyon was really able to just mould like as a fresh canvas, as opposed to those players who've been playing together for a long time as well as playing for a long time. It'll be interesting to see how they slot into that game plan and style. That's it. Have you changed your pick for Premier, or are you still... I think you were Brisbane and Melbourne were your two leading into the season?
Yeah, I'm all fully behind Adelaide, man. No, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to tell you even close to who it might be at this point, because the only one who looks like holding up form the most over this period has been Sydney, even though they had a bad loss too.
Yeah.
Sydney and Melbourne probably my top two still.
I think Melbourne, especially if they get Gore back.
Yeah. Brisbane have dropped off for sure. Their forward combination is working against lower sides, but not so much against the better sides. I wouldn't be surprised if Brisbane's season improved from here, but I definitely wouldn't be keeping them on.
I think they're still formidable at home, but I'm not sure how I rate them away. And obviously, technically, it was away on the weekend, but it was against North. I think we'll see how they go against good teams away again, because obviously they lost to the Bulldogs that Eddie had, where they were thoroughly expected to win. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they go from here.
It's a weird one too, because you look at the ladder specifically, and Richmond being bottom 4 with a percentage of 92, and Carlton being top 4 with a percentage of 96 is a weird way to be after that round 1 draw.
There's only a few teams I'm writing off at the moment, and it's I think the obvious ones are
writing Hawthorn off.
Yeah, I'm writing Hawthorn off. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
I think that's probably
just a few.
They've had 2 almost 100-point losses. I think that's fair. Hawthorn, West Coast, GWS, and North.
You're not writing off Gold Coast?
And Gold Coast.
Okay.
Yeah. I think they're the teams that are, for me, in the... I don't think they have the ability to do it bucket.
GWS are going to snag wins out of nowhere against a bunch of teams.
The star power in there to do it, but I don't think they've got the full round-the-ground structure to do it. Richmond are so unpredictable, I refuse to write them off.
I've said that year after year, and you've always made fun of me for it. So
yeah. It's funny, though, I think the way Richmond fans talk about that Tom Lynch ball that definitely hit the post last year, it's like they made it past an elimination final. Like, they didn't even win a final, and it's like they think they were 1 kick away from a grand final. And the reminder has to be there that it's a team that really struggles in finals, Brisbane, who then went on after shaking that hoodoo to beat Melbourne the next week. So it will be interesting, but not really willing to write anyone off at this point. Speaking of Gold Coast, though, I watched that game, and halfway through the last quarter, I realised I'd hardly been looking at the score. I just kind of zoned out because it was terrible quality footy. And moments later, Freo hit the lead when I looked at the scoreboard, and I don't feel like I'm exaggerating when I felt like Gold Coast were like 6 goals in front. There is no way they should have lost that game. They dominated 2.5 to 3 quarters of that game, and just let the worst ball movement team in the AFL run over them in a quarter and a half of football. That is pretty much unforgivable as far as defensive efforts go.
Well, I saw a stat it was on some footy show, I don't know which one, about Gold Coast centre bounce attendances and the fact that Raul Anderson and Miller attend 80% of their centre bounce attendances, and that 20% is filled by like 20 plus other people.
So there's no real.
There's no backup for them. So late in games, it's them or bust.
Yeah.
It's not like where you see, let's use Geelong for an example, where they'll throw someone into the middle that hasn't been there. Like if Dangerfield has been playing forward, they can rotate him in. If Guthrie's been playing half back, they'll pull him in.
Cameron,
you'll
Holmes,
even
Duncan,
see,
yeah.
Exactly, attend the centre bounces, and even like
Freo
putting
Jackson
people like
into a few
Stewart
I thought was
and
really
Cameron
interesting.
on the wing. So they don't have that option at the moment.
Yeah.
And there could be a few of their forwards who might be able to do so in future. But it is a bit bare there. There.
I agree. It's interesting to see, but hopefully they can pull it together. I like Gold Coast as a franchise.
I like
I've always
Stuart Dew.
been a fan of their players. I like Stuart Dew. I think he seems like he's got the group together, which is the first time I think we've seen that in Gold Coast history. We just really need to see them getting some wins because it's becoming untenable for Dew. When he left the game early,
I think they're making a big deal about that. He didn't leave early.
well, he joked about it. He said that he didn't want to give Freo a clap off before the other team came on, so he was just getting out of the coach's box because there was a changeover of games.
Yeah, and also he was just going down to the rooms. He just had to cross the field to do it.
But I did just think, how close are we to a Gold Coast change of coach again? Because it's becoming a merry-go-round.
He's got 18 months to run. I reckon at least minimum let him see out the year. If by the end of the year they're, let's say, bottom 4, he's gone. Pushing for 8, maybe he stays for the rest of next year. Top 8.
I'd like to see him get another year. Because I do think he has that group together. And losing Rankin was big for them, I think.
We've seen how good he's been for Adelaide, so...
There was a Jobism I missed last week.
Oh.
That was tweeted by Lenny Phillips on Twitter, who pretty much only tweets about football, so I'm not surprised he noticed it, which was the old saying, the longer the game goes, the bigger they are, the bigger they stay, they don't get any smaller. I love Job. He talks absolute... I'd rather him than Dermy any day, because at least I'm going to get absolute nonsense from Job.
Yeah, I feel like... this is going to maybe sound mean even. Job is lovable dumb.
Dermy has an arrogance to his dumbness.
Dermy's got brain damage.
Yeah, he should be part of that lawsuit, I think.
Yeah. But in the same way, I think Dermy is kind of wholesome.
Yeah, it was funny watching him do the Freo game because he was talking about Gold Coast forwards as if they were like the under-8s team he coached.
Yeah.
Oh, look, that's a beautiful kicking action. Look how he gets that ball onto his foot. And I was like, oh, Dermy.
It's kind of wholesome, but it's also very frustrating to listen to when I just want the game to be called.
Yes.
And I've seen a bunch of people online complain about straightforward calling being boring. It's so much better. It's exciting.
I'd rather that than 5-minute patches where the game's not called. I genuinely complained about this the other day. When Waitman took that mark, they were busy talking about something else. Then they had to cut off the sentence they were talking about to yell Waitman, which means that any time that showed as a highlight ever again, we've got the worst commentary in the world.
Thankfully, they can
use radio
sub it out with radio commentary. But I'll even take BT's calls where he just says the name of players back and forth over just incessant talking.
I saw last week. Butler, danger.
That's so much better. Immediately.
I saw the halftime interview from the same game as Brett Kirk's Hearts and Minds intro. And he was interviewing Travis Boak at halftime, and it was the most out-of-pocket... First question, I'm with last year's best and fairest winner, Travis Boak. Travis, was it your intention to step up as a leader this year?
Huh?
How do you answer that?
Yes.
Halftime, walking off the ground, probably knackered. Was it your intention to step up as a leader this year?
No,
Passes in the
about the
microphone.
game. Brett Kirk's got a weird heart and mind.
I loved that. I was glad I saw it. Poor Travis Boak. Wonder if he ever thinks about that. Probably not.
No. I think he's just thinking about getting a bit of his form back this year.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Do you have any topics for this week?
No, I've got
You've
nothing.
been gazonked again.
Yeah,
so
man.
probably fair. I've got 2 Who Would Wins.
All right, hit me with your who would wins.
I've got Unlucky Losers Edition,
Okay.
which was teams that were insanely dominant throughout
Oh,
the
you're
year
going
and
full
then
teams?
Yeah. This
Okay.
time I am. 2008 Geelong versus 2009 St Kilda.
2009 St Kilda.
I agree. That team was insane.
Their home and away record that year, and obviously I know Geelong's was good too, but something about that 2009 St Kilda team just making the most out of players that should not
if the ball, and
have
like it
gone
couldn't
that well.
happen to a nicer person. If the ball hadn't bounced that way for Stephen Milne, they're a flag-winning team.
I think we'd be talking about Ross Lyon a little bit differently if that happened.
They could be a two-time flag-winning team. They were moments away from being a two-time flag-winning team, both games.
Yeah.
The Scarlett Topoke in one game.
Which has got to be a top 10 grand final highlight for me.
Incredible. Like, everything about that. And the learning that Chapman had, like, a fractured collarbone when he wheeled around and kicked that over his shoulder. Like, it's just a lot about that moment that's insane. And then, the next year, that draw, like, had there been the extra time as there is now, you feel like St Kilda had all the momentum. So I agree with that one. My other one was the Sent to the Shadow Realm edition, staying on the grand final theme of 2007 Port versus 2019 GWS.
Okay, so Port played a better team.
Yes, but
GWS have a lot of talent.
I feel like it was just stage fright.
Yeah. The question is, okay, so assuming it's in a year where they've... So let's say it's 2 years removed for Port and 1 year removed from GWS. I'm probably going to lean GWS on recency bias, but I shouldn't because Port...
I feel like they both played their grand final in the prelim. I feel like they both had that same problem. Sydney kind of had it this year. They played that thriller against Collingwood, won by a point, and probably were just emotionally drained as much as physically drained the next week. But I think it's GWS. I think on talent alone, that GWS team... I feel like a week before in the prelim they would have beaten Richmond. It's just grand final Richmond are good at, and GWS had massive stage fright.
I think I'm leaning GWS. I think there's a bit of recency bias, and obviously Jeremy Cameron wasn't quite as good then as he is now. But I think they can get that.
Wakelin on Cameron and Treadray on, I guess Haynes. Treadray kick back.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, but I think I'm going GWS.
All right. I think that's my who would wins.
Yeah, I don't have a lot this week. Apologies because I have been pretty zonked, but
don't drink like 5 litres of green cordial and eat 7 Domino's pizzas. You're
rough. Burying the lead that green cordial had alcohol in it.
Yeah, it did a little. A lot.
No, terrible time. So I don't really have a lot extra. You got anything?
West Coast's waffle team suffering one of the most incredible defeats I've ever seen. There were a few games in the waffle this week that were weird. So you had Perth kicked 1 goal for a whole game in perfect conditions in Mandurah. But yeah, West Coast letting a team kick more than 200 and just 100 in each half as well. It wasn't like there was a flow one way or the other.
1 goal 6.
I can't even fathom how West Coast's waffle team could be that bad. That's a real issue. And this week they've put in a request to have their game delayed until they can get some players back and fitness back. And the waffle has declined it. So their AFL team has so many injuries now that their waffle team can't cover it.
Watch them win next week against East Freo.
Oh yeah, it'd be the exact kind of game East Freo lose. They got Johnny Marsh back this week though, which is a pretty big help. Jed Hagen has been playing... I feel like he went to the wrong team. So I thought he'd get drafted last year. I thought he'd be the kind of person Essendon would really need, but then they got Tip Moody back, and that was the hole I thought it would fill. He is playing for Port Adelaide in the Sandful, who have lost all 3 games and have only kicked 10 goals in each game, which is not a great place to be if you're a goal sneak in a low-scoring, struggling Sandful team. I thought it was a smart move. Sandful small forwards seem to be getting picked up pretty much every year, and I thought it's a place you want to be. But no, he has kicked, I think, 1 goal in the 3 games, and that Port team's struggling. So it's interesting to see, because they're usually so strong in Sandful, or at least strong enough with their representative from AFL level, and they're having a mare. So
yeah, he kicked 1 of their 6 goals in round 1.
Yeah, 1 of 6, and that's a if you told him he was going to kick a 6th of their goals every week, he probably would have been stoked. But I think he was expecting them to score more than 6 goals. But he'll be an interesting one. I don't know if anyone needs a small forward in the mid-season draft this year. I guess there's still time. But
yeah, I saw someone on the Eagles board talking about potentially picking up Schumacher, who's been playing well in the waffle. And I really liked him when he was on Carlton's list. He only got 1 game, and I was always disappointed that he didn't get more. So I'd love to see him get picked up.
Every time I see Tobe Watson playing, I'm still amazed that he's not on an AFL list. He's a class above.
He's got a real name for footy, doesn't he? Tobe
Does
Watson?
Toby Watson, Tobe Watson, however you want to say it. He stands out too with that red hair too. He's especially now he wears black and white. The ginger really pops out. I did see the AFL change their rules around.
Yeah, I read it and then went, this doesn't make sense to me.
Well, they just have to submit that a player is no longer an active footballer, so they can't be picked up or, rejoin the list mid-season to reopen that spot on their list. It was just after, obviously, a lot of teams have had players retire mid-season. So it's basically so that you can't have a player retire the week of the mid-season draft to free up that spot. Like, there's got to be a player who's actually a missing spot from that list who hasn't made that decision to free up that spot. It's an actual genuine hole in the list.
Seems very easy to abuse still.
It's a combination of two the first knee-jerk reaction was when Hawthorn walked Jai Newcombe to the mid-season draft because that he wanted more money. And then they made it so that only AFL players who are formally listed can ask for a certain contract, and players who've never been on AFL list only get the rookie level contract. And now they've made it based on last year when who was it retired for Richmond?
It's a great question, isn't it?
Whoever it was retired for Richmond, and that left them the spot. Oh, it was a few years ago, and they picked up Marlene Pickett. So basically, they're finally.
Sean Grigg?
Yeah, Grigg retired and they picked up Marlene Pickett. They're finally covering that.
It's really funny because my instinct was to say Sean Grigg.
Yeah, it was a few years ago. But they're finally covering that hole in there. I think it's just something that they bought in. I don't think it's a bad idea. I like the mid-season draft as a concept, but unlike the AFL to rush things.
Actually, I guess I'll briefly talk about this then. Your favourite, Hutchie.
Oh, yeah.
Basically said on... What's their show? Is it just called The Footy Show?
Yeah, The Footy Show.
The Sunday Footy Show?
Sunday Footy Show.
No, what are they?
Channel 9, it's a Sunday Footy Show. Yeah.
Either way. He was talking about that they should just scrap basically list sizes, essentially. And if you're in the bottom half of the ladder, you should just be able to walk anyone from the street into your club to fix holes in the list.
I did see that. List planning is an important part of football.
He basically argued that Hawthorn are doing terribly. They should be able to pick up experienced players. Hutchie, why do you think Hawthorn are doing terribly right now? What did they do in the last two off seasons that might have caused this?
It's baffling.
Did they let go their experienced players? Did they trade them out to bring in youth?
I've seen a bit of sentiment around that. Started by Collingwood supporters about having no ruck.
Yeah.
They're like, well, why can't we just pick a ruck from the VFL? Well, because you don't have enough rucks on your list. You traded one to Hawthorn, and now he's not getting a game there either. But like you got rid of your ruck, your backup ruck, and now you don't have one.
Yeah.
Crazy what happens when you trade out two rucks.
They do have a backup ruck, and they don't want to play him because he's not good enough.
Project player.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Play him if it's.
Yeah, I agree. The other one with Hutchie is the fact that he's just winning the both sides is a war of. So you've got Mitch Robinson throwing fire at Kane Corns, and Kane. They both work for SEN. It's just all. It's all one. It's all clickbait. Like it's. It's so frustrating. We'll have an issue come up, which is effectively we need to talk less about this. Like a coach comes out and says we need to talk less about this as an institution because it's not good for the game. And then the next week your articles being like, I agree, we should talk less, but that's just a different way of talking about it. And like I've seen more articles about the same topic that everyone's agreeing not to talk about this week than I saw the week before.
Yeah, and I think it's a tough one because it's easy to obviously the big talking point is Jason Horne-Francis. I think there's an area where you can do it. You can point out his inconsistency and his lack of drive.
Booing him is weird if you're not even a fan of North.
Yeah. And I think the whole hashtag ice bath thing is really a joke at this point.
It's fueling the fire. And this is from a bloke who's now complaining about the treatment of Jason Horne-Francis, who put a target on Walsh's back, who put a target on Dacos's back, who is now putting a target on Sheasel's back. He spent years going after young players from other clubs, and now that it's a young South Australian player who he successfully lit a media fire that caused him to go back to Port, which seems like corruption of some kind.
Yeah.
now he's trying to defend this player and protect him in the media every week. Like,
12 months ago, Jason Horne-Francis was a joke to Kane Corns.
yes,
and then
but that lowered his trade price and got him back to Port and made him not want to stay in Melbourne because the whole Melbourne media was out to get him.
And now that he is playing for Port,
Now he's a precious little golden child. And look, I loved what Ken Hindley did on the weekend.
And none of this is us having a go at Jason Horne-Francis. This is not his fault.
No. And also, I love what Ken Hindley did. I know that stuff happens behind closed doors all the time.
Yeah.
It reminded me of Brad Alton's first 6 months at Geelong when Mark Thompson, in the press conference, was like, all of you, just leave him alone. This is not what sport's about. And I loved that from Ken Hinkley. Came out in the press conference after and said the same thing. Horne-Francis' final quarter was brilliant.
Yep.
They wouldn't have won that game without him. And I hope we see more of that in the future because we know what talent he's got.
Yeah.
But if we keep the media spotlight on him, if specifically SEN keeps the media spotlight on him as much as they can, he's not going to reach that talent because no one thrives in that environment.
I wouldn't be shocked if at some there was a turning point if this continues where he just quit the game at 23, 24.
You look at Jack Watts, he had started that season with Port in career best form.
I mean,
snapped his leg, and then in the few months he couldn't play because he had a snapped leg. He went, I hate being in that spotlight, and just never came back. And you can't blame players. I know it's obviously a good income if you can earn it, but for the ones who get that extra spotlight, it just can't be worth it for your mental health.
Castagna as well from Richmond.
Yeah.
The fans, the way they treated him.
Demoralising.
I always think of Tom Swift as well. That's one of the worst ones.
Swift's another great example. I've never seen
I'm
club
glad
boo their
that
own
he's
player
got a successful
before.
career now. I'm really happy for him.
Yeah, so it's just a constant cycle. And whipping boys are such a huge bugbear of mine. The fact that these fans who've probably not played football since they were 13 years old seem to think they know more than professional AFL coaches and list managers. And the other is that, it's not their fault they get selected. They're not the selectors. They're just trying to play football. And if they get selected, they're going to try and do their best job. But, that's not on them. It's the same as if you're the first draft pick. You don't pick yourself. You just had a really good junior year and that made them think you were the best fit.
And I was livid on the weekend after the Carlton game when Lockie Plowman was one of the very few defenders in that team who actually gave a red-hot crack the entire game. He's got his limitations online, absolutely roasting him to the nines, and it's fucked up.
There's a level of the irony when fans always say they'd rather see their team have a go and make a mess of it than play cold, boring defensive footy, and then the moment they do, or if just one player does like Plowman did, which is what he was doing, he was trying to play as attacking as possible to bring that game back. And yeah, sure, he had a fair few clangers, but at least he was giving it a red hot go.
Yeah.
And I'd rather see my team do that every day of the week than play a boring loss.
Yeah.
Because they could have kept that to a 3-goal loss. Really? But what would the point of that been?
It fell apart in the last. They kicked those first 2 goals and everyone thought it was on. And obviously Adelaide were good enough to wrestle that back, but I'd rather do that than...
Yeah, go out in flames rather than go out boring. Always. That's better football. And, you see... And that's why you'll see some of the best teams cop reasonably big losses in their premiership years or the year before it, because they're playing that kind of football that is to try and win at all costs.
That's how you should be. You should be trying to win.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be Hawthorning it.
Anyway, here we are, 5 rounds in. St Kilda is on top of the ladder. Essendon is in the top 4. Everything's normal.
In the top 4 with a premiership profile.
Yeah, they've beaten Melbourne. Richmond's bottom 4. Geelong's 11th. This is what we all thought was going to happen this year. Everything's fine.
It's just a classic round 5 moment.
I'm sure things will balance out a bit more before the bye. The bye is when I like to measure a season bye. Obviously, we had a lot of changes last year after the bye, but I think it's a time where teams are actually finding some stock and momentum. I don't know if it's round 11 again this year or 12 with the gather round.
I think it's 11 through 14. It's
because Geelong and Gold
4
Coast
rounds.
have a bye. They're only 2 teams in 1 week. Weird.
I don't understand it, but hey, Gil's the mastermind.
Oh yeah, and he's still the CEO, even though he retired a year ago. Thanks for joining us once again. We will see you next week to talk about football that was played in a state that was not South Australia and some football that was played in South Australia. This has been The Back Pocket. You'll find us at The Back Pocket AU on pretty much anywhere, or just Google The Back Pocket Podcast and we normally show up. Thanks for listening. See you next week.
I'm retiring. I won't see you next week.